Hello, everyone. I am Jeffrey Snook Cosgrave, and today we are going to be going over the benefits of conservative stocking rates with beef cattle in the state of Georgia. Why do we care about the stocking rate? Having an appropriate stocking rate provides a producer with multiple benefits and very little downside. The stocking rate a producer chooses to use will determine the intensity of grazing management they choose to take on as well. Producers should choose an adequate stocking rate for their operation and desired risk level to avoid overgrazing their pasture and/or range land. High stocking rates are normally associated with the very best grass growing conditions, while lower stocking rates can be associated with lower input systems and/or with generally poor grass growing conditions. Now, let's go over some of the benefits from using a conservative stocking rate. And keep in mind, the main concern for focusing on stocking rate is to avoid overgrazing one's pasture and/or rangeland. Improved forage quality is a huge benefit you get from a conservative stocking rate. Cattle will graze the most palatable forage available first, before selecting less palatable forage options. It is due to this nature of cattle that a lower stocking rate will allow for improved forage quality, as the most palatable forages will not be overgrazed and diminished from the pasture. This preferential grazing of more palatable forages can change the biodiversity of the pasture and/or rangeland, affecting the forage quality, population proportions of forage species, and it can even increase your weed populations. Overall reduced risk of overgrazing is another huge benefit from a conservative stocking rate. I really enjoy this little image here. You can see a good looking pasture, then you see overstocked conditions, and you're left with a pretty sad looking pasture. The risk of overgrazing a pasture or rangeland is greatly diminished when using a conservative stocking rate. There is plenty of forage available for the animals on the land, and the risk of overconsuming a forage to the point of reducing its ability to reproduce next year is relatively low when using a conservative stocking rate. There can be improved animal performance when using a conservative stocking rate due to less competition for forage and overall better forage quality, leading this to be another benefit. The improved performance can be seen as increased weight gain or increased reproductive efficiency. A benefit that I don't believe is talked about very much is a producer's preparation for undesirable weather when using a conservative stocking rate. The use of a conservative stocking rate allows the producer to be prepared for poor growing seasons or unexpected weather issues. I would also like to point out that producers using a moderate to high stocking rate should be willing and prepared to reduce their number and disperse their herd in case of undesirable weather patterns such as drought. I know there's a picture of rain here, but drought is really the killer in this instance. My favorite benefit from using a conservative stocking rate is being able to use a less intensive management practice. Using a conservative stocking rate allows producers to practice a less intensive management style over what would be required at higher stocking rates. This can be beneficial for a producer that does not wish to or is unable to put a lot of time, effort, and resources into their operation. Another benefit of conservative stocking rates is actually a very comparable profit margin when compared to moderate stocking rates. The primary concern with conservative stocking rates is a reduced net income or profit generally. But the study by Hawks et al. Out of New Mexico State showed no difference in financial returns from conservative versus moderate stocking rates. But it is important to note that there may be a financial advantage in moderate grazing compared to conservative grazing, but it does come at additional risk. You can see it here on this chart that I've put here for you guys, that it is uneconomical to be in this economic zone, but as you get closer to the unstable or overgrazed, you are running a lot more risk, but there's more profit to be had in that zone. Determining stocking rate can be a difficult challenge. Fortunately for you, this presentation is aimed to help producers and anyone choose and determine what is an appropriate stocking rate for their operation. But before we get started, let's go over some important definitions that will be used throughout this bulletin, and that'll just be good to keep in the back pocket. I would like to point out that before we get started, these first three definitions are from Redfern and Bidwell over at OK State. The stocking rate is defined as the number of animals on a given amount of land over a certain period of time. Stocking rate is generally expressed as animal units, AU, per unit of land area. The animal unit, AU, is a term that is used to help understand and estimate the forage requirements. The size of the animal does in fact matter. Carrying capacity. The carrying capacity is the stocking rate that is sustainable over time per unit of land area. And overgrazing, this final one is from Teague et al. Overgrazing is the repeated heavy grazing over several years that results in deterioration of the plant community and a decline in the vigor, production, and the biodiversity of pasture and rangelands. Redfern and Bidwell over at OK State had a great way of helping explain the animal unit a little bit further, and I decided to go ahead and add it in here. The animal unit is set up for a 1,000-pound cow with a calf. That is your standard animal unit. Smaller animals and larger animals will vary from this animal unit. The animal unit a day, generally it's about 2.5% of an animal's weight. A 1,000-pound cow, that would be about 25 pounds. They put 26 here. That's a conservative rate. Animal unit a month, math. Animal unit a year, more math, would be about 9,360 pounds of dry forage per animal per year. Now, let's do an example calculation together for determining stocking rate. To keep this example easy, we're just going to use 1,000-pound cows, so 1 AU, but do remember that if you have heavier animals or lighter animals, this number will vary. So say a producer has 50 head of 1,000-pound cows that will be grazing a 200-acre pasture for 12 months or a year. You would take your animals multiplied by your grazing season, and you would divide your total land area by that number. So for this example, we have 200 acres divided by 50 AUs times 12 months, which would equal 0.33. That would be 0.33 acres for one animal for 1 month. You could take that 0.33, multiply it by 12, and that would give us 3.96. We're going to go ahead and round that up to 4 acres per one animal per 1 year. And for 50 animals, that leads us to about 200 acres. So he could get away with it, but it's a risky business if any issues come up with this. I would recommend maybe taking off a couple of head, but this is no problem with this stocking rate at all. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, so this is the end. And if you have any questions, I highly recommend you reach out to your local agricultural extension agent. They're a wealth of knowledge. And these are my sources if anyone would like to check them out. Thank you.